Good evening. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Monday, Yom Sheni. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? Yehud in South Carolina, Shendor in the Bronx, Bill in mid-Missouri, Bella in Florida, Melissa in Great Neck, Guy in Ohio, Nancy in North Carolina, Renee in Indiana, Steven in New Hampshire, Belle in Texas, Camille in Texas, Yosef in Sierra Nevada, Gail in Kansas City, Lorraine in Texas, Bella in Florida, and Chaim in Florida, Alan in New York City, Ilanit in Silver Spring. Welcome, everybody. Colorful page today. Our daf is page 64 here in Tractate Avoda Zara, the 27th volume of the Talmud, continuing our discussion of Mishnah number 1 here in chapter 5. We pick this up at the bottom of page 63b. Rav Nachman and Ula and Avimi bar Papi were sitting, and Rabbi Chiya bar Ami, who was studying with them, was sitting among them. And they were sitting, and a dilemma was raised before them. If one hired a person to break barrels of wine that were used for a libation so that the wine will spill out, what is the law? Right? So it seems like a Gentile is paying a Jew to destroy wine that was used for the purpose of idolatry. So he's being paid by a Gentile who possesses wine that was used for a libation for idolatry, but his job is to destroy those barrels of wine so that they cannot be used for anything, including idolatry. So is he going to be permitted to keep his wage? Certainly if he was, being paid to store or freshen up or, take care of barrels of wine that are used for idolatry, that's going to be prohibited for him to keep his wage because he's being employed for a purpose that's going to preserve wine that's used for libation, wine that's used for idolatry. So why wouldn't he be able to keep his wage when he's being paid to destroy such barrels? Interesting answer. Do we say that since he has an interest in the preservation of the barrels until he breaks them so that he can be paid for breaking them, therefore, his wage is forbidden, right? Since he's being paid to break those barrels, well, then he doesn't want them to be broken until he breaks them, and he's getting paid to do that, right? So if some natural force was going to come by and break the barrels, he might be tempted to protect the barrels so that he can be the one that breaks them and get paid for that. Or perhaps should it be reasoned that any action that one performs to reduce impropriety is permitted, even if he is the one paid for the actual breaking? So Rav Nachman said, yeah, he may break them and let a blessing come upon him. And the Gemara suggests, let us say that a Baraisa supports this opinion. One may not hoe, right, like the agricultural process of hoeing. One may not hoe together with a Gentile in a field that contains a forbidden mixture of diverse kinds, kilayim, but one may uproot diverse kinds with him in order to reduce impropriety. Again, a Jew is not permitted to plant wheat in a vineyard. There's a specific prohibition in the Torah that prevents that. A Gentile is permitted to do that. He's not under that obligation. That's only a prohibition on Jews. So a Jew, even in a Gentile's field, may not take the job of planting wheat in a vineyard. But sounds like he may take the job of uprooting wheat from the vineyard. The Gentile doesn't have to pull it up, because he's not obligated he's not prohibited to plant kilayim, to plant diverse kinds. But if the job is uprooting wheat from a vineyard, sounds like a Jew is permitted to do that, even though he's prohibited to plant wheat in the vineyard, even in the field of a Gentile. So one may not hoe together with a Gentile in the field, but one may uproot diverse kinds with him in order to reduce impropriety. Now we're on page 64a. So the sages initially assumed that in accordance with whose opinion is this baraisa? It is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who says that not only one who sows or grows diverse kinds, but even one who maintains diverse kinds is flogged. As it is taught in the Baraisa, one who removes the weeds that are interfering with the growth of the plants, or who covers up the seeds of diverse kinds, meaning puts earth over them so they can grow, he would be flogged. Right? So even though he didn't plant the wheat in the vineyard, if he's helping the wheat to grow in the vineyard by weeding that plot or by adding topsoil, he would be flogged. Rabbi Akiva says even one who maintains them instead of actively uprooting them is flogged. The Gemara asks, what is the reasoning of Rabbi Akiva? And the Gemara answers, the verse states, you shall not sow your field with diverse kinds of seed. That prohibition is Leviticus 19:19. So I've derived only that the case of one who sows, right? One is actually planting the seeds. From where is it derived that one who maintains kilayim also receives lashes? The verse states, not diverse kinds of seed, indicating that there should not be diverse kinds in one's field. If one permits it to grow, encourages it to grow, maintains its growth, he is guilty. He has violated this prohibition. Now the Gemara concludes its support for the opinion of Rav Nachman, where we started this, right, that the Jew who's hired to break barrels of wine that would be used for a libation, he may accept his wage. So this is support for Rav Nachman. It is prohibited to maintain diverse kinds, but nevertheless, if one wishes to maintain diverse kinds temporarily in order to be paid for uprooting them, thereby reducing impropriety, it is permitted. And similarly, it is permitted for one to receive payment for breaking barrels of wine used for a libation. But the Gemara rejects this reasoning. No! In accordance with whose opinion is this Baraisa, which deems it permitted for one to uproot diverse kinds with a Gentile? It is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, who permit one to maintain diverse kinds, but prohibit one from maintaining wine used for a libation. So there is no proof from this Baraisa in support of Rav Nachman's opinion. Right, so in other words, the law of kilayim is not as stringent as the law of distancing a Jew from any kind of idolatry. Right, we've seen over and over again the laws are so machmir, so stringent when it comes to Avoda Zara, to idolatry. Right, so we don't have a proof yet of Rav Nachman's opinion that a Jew can be hired by a Gentile to destroy barrels of wine that have been or would be used for idolatry, even though he might have some interest in those barrels not being destroyed, like I said, by some natural force, so that he can get paid for destroying them. It's that interest that he doesn't want to see them destroyed until he gets paid for destroying them that is the problem here. So the Gemara asks, if the Baraisa is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, why does the Tana specifically permit uprooting with a Gentile? Even maintaining the diverse kinds, the kilayim is permitted. And the Gemara answers, here we're dealing with a case where he performed the uprooting unpaid, and it is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that giving an unpaid gift to a Gentile is prohibited. And the Gemara reasons that Rav Nachman's ruling can in any event be proven from this Baraisa. From the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, we may understand the law according to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Doesn't Rabbi Yehuda say that it is prohibited to give a Gentile an unpaid gift because you're concerned that he's going to celebrate with his idol, right? The whole point is that when these laws are being enacted, these decrees, all of the Gentiles are idolaters, right? That's the big concern. But to reduce impropriety, he holds that it is permitted to work with a Gentile, right? If what you're doing with the Gentile is destroying what would otherwise come to be used for idolatry. So the same can be said according to Rabbi Akiva as well. Although Rabbi Akiva says that one who maintains kilayim is flogged, he maintains as opposed to planting. Although Rabbi Akiva says that one who maintains kilayim is flogged, rather than actively uprooting it, he presumably holds that if the purpose is to reduce impropriety, it is permitted. So the Gemara concludes, and nothing more is to be said on this matter. And in fact, the law is that a Jew can accept his wage if he's hired by a Gentile to destroy objects of idolatry. New subject. Rav Nachman, Ula, Avimi bar Papi, and Rabbi Chia bar Ami were sitting again, and a dilemma was raised before them with regard to the proceeds from the sale of an idol, right, an object of idol worship, that are in the possession of a Gentile who sold the object to another. What is the law? Does the object of idol worship transfer its forbidden status to the money that is in the possession of a Gentile as it would to money in the possession of a Jew or not? Right? So if a Jew had in his possession an idol, an object of Avoda Zara, what is his obligation? To destroy it, to in no way benefit from it, but he needs to destroy it so that no other Jew may come to benefit from it accidentally, right? A Jew who owns some kind of object of Avodah Zarah or finds it in his possession, he has to destroy it. He cannot sell it, right? Because the forbidden status would then transfer to the money that he sold it for. What about a Gentile? Gentiles are prohibited, all people are prohibited to engage in idolatry. Right, so Gentiles are under Torah law obligated to reject idolatry, but they still don't have the stringencies associated with them that Jews have. So if a Gentile owned an idol and he sold it, now he received money for it. Can he do regular business with a Jew using that money? Right? He sold an idol, he got $100. Can he now go to a Jew's store and, buy a new pair of pants from a Jewish tailor with the $100 if we know that where he got the $100 was by selling an idol? That's the question being asked. So Rav Nachman said to them, it stands to reason that the proceeds from the sale of an object of idolatry that are in the possession of a Gentile are permitted. That the money is not prohibited, even though the idol was. Now, this may be proven from certain Gentiles who came before Rabba bar Avu to convert. And Rabba bar Avu said to them, go sell everything that you have, including your objects of idolatry, and then come back to me to convert. Now, what is the reason he gave this advice? Isn't it because he maintains that the proceeds from the sale of an object of idolatry that are in the possession of a Gentile become permitted? And therefore, he suggested they sell the objects of idol worship so they could derive benefit from the money after they converted. Because if they hadn't sold it, then after they converted and they would come to find an object of idolatry in their possession, they couldn't benefit from it at all. They would have to destroy it. But if they already turned it into money, right, their money, what's in their bank account, they can bring with them when they convert to Judaism. But the Gemara rejects this proof. But perhaps it is different there. As since their intention is to convert, they certainly revoked the idolatrous status of these objects. And when they sold them, they were selling permitted items, because we've learned that a Jew cannot remove an idol from the realm of idolatry. A Jew cannot revoke the status of idolatry from an object of idolatry, but an idolater can. Right? He has this statue, he's bowed to it in the past, and he can say, I now reject idolatry. That's just a piece of stone. That's just a hunk of metal. That's no longer an idol to me. And he has revoked it from idolatry, and now it could be melted down, and a Jew could benefit from that metal. In fact, an idolater who can revoke from the realm of idolatry an idol, even if it wasn't one that he worshiped, but something that some other idolater worshiped. Still, any idolater can revoke from the realm of idolatry the status of an idol, even if it wasn't, it has to be legally his, so that he has the power to revoke its status. But he doesn't have to be the one who considered it an idol and bowed down to it in the past, right? So are we saying that, these people who are going to convert to Judaism, before they convert, they're Gentiles, and if they then sell their idols in order to turn them into money before they convert, well, it's clear that they have rejected idolatry because they're in the process of converting. So maybe before they sold it, they already removed that idol from idolatry. So it doesn't prove that a Gentile can sell an idol and then that money becomes permitted to Jews, because in this case, we know that the idolater revoked the idolatrous status of that idol. What about an idolater who hasn't done that? What about an idolater who's still an idolater and he happened to sell one of his idols? Can his money become permitted for trade with a Jew? Rather, proof may be brought from here, as it is taught in a Baraisa, in the case of a Jew who has a creditor, in the case of a Jew who was a creditor to a Gentile, right? So the Jew lent money to a Gentile. Jews cannot lend to each other at interest, but they can lend to non-Jews at interest. So here, a Jew lent money to a Gentile and became his creditor for the amount of 100 dinars. And the Gentile sold an object of idol worship, and from the proceeds, he brought the payment of the debt. Or he sold wine that was used for a libation, and from the proceeds, he brought payment of the debt. Can the Jewish creditor accept that money in repayment of the loan? Answer, yes. Yes, it is permitted. But if the Gentile said to him, wait for me until I sell an object of idolatry, and from the proceeds I will bring you the payment of the debt, or wait until I sell wine used for a libation, and from the proceeds I will bring you payment of the debt, this money is forbidden. And this proves that the proceeds of an object of idolatry in the possession of a Gentile are permitted unless it was a situation where the Jew has some kind of an interest in the idol not being destroyed, right? That's why if the idolater said, borrowed $100 from the Jew, so he owes $100. If he says to the Jew, listen, don't worry, I'll pay you back. I'm going to go sell this idol, and after I sell it, I'll pay you. Now the Jew can't accept that $100 that was payment of the idol. But if the idolater just did that, he just sold it, and he said, here's $100, I got it by selling an idol, then the Jew can accept that, because it was all, the sale, had nothing to do with the Jew. He had no interest in it. He had no knowledge of it. But if it's a situation where the Jew wants the idol to be preserved, right, to not be destroyed by some outside force before the idolater can sell it so he can repay the loan, that's where the Jew has some kind of an interest in the continued existence of the idol, and therefore he cannot accept that money in payment of the loan. Now, the Gemara asks, what is different in the first clause that it is permitted, and what is different in the latter clause that it is forbidden? Rav Sheshes said, in the latter clause, the proceeds are forbidden because the Jew desires the preservation of the object of idolatry or the wine used for libation, since he knows that the Gentile must sell it in order to repay the debt. So the Gemara asks, and if he desires its preservation in a case like this, is the money actually forbidden? But didn't we learn in the Mishna in Tractate Demai 610? That's one of the tractates that has Mishna but not Gemara. That's why it's not one of the tractates of the that we read in our Daf Yomi journey. In the case of a convert and a Gentile who inherited from their Gentile father. In other words, there were two brothers who were Gentiles, but one of them converted to Judaism. And after he converted, their father died and they inherited property. right? But it's a Gentile father, he has a Gentile brother, and the convert, of course, is now a Jew. So what happens? Didn't we learn in the Mishnah? In the case of a convert and a Gentile who inherited from their Gentile father, the convert can say to his Gentile brother, you take the objects of idolatry and I will take the money, or you take the wine used for libation and I will take the produce. But if they make this exchange after the property came into the possession of the convert, it is forbidden. Because if the convert receives property that includes objects of Avoda Zara, of idolatry, he can't benefit from them in any way. His obligation is to destroy it. But if before it ever came into his possession, right, there was some kind of an estate, and he says to his brother who's a Gentile, listen, you take the stuff that I can't take, and I'll take, other stuff. Then it would be permitted. So Rava Bar Ula says the ruling of the Mishnah is stated with regard to an object of idolatry whose value can be distributed among its shards, i.e., even if it were broken to pieces, its value would remain, so the convert does not desire its preservation. The Gemara asks, the resolution works out well in the case of objects of idolatry with regard to wine used for libation. Then what is there to say? There is no situation in which the convert does not desire the preservation of the wine until the exchange, right? If the convert is saying, okay, you take the wine used for libation, I'll take the produce, the produce that was never involved in idolatry. Now, until they actually make the division, now there's a Jew who has an interest in this wine used as libation or objects of idolatry being preserved, that they shouldn't, burn up and be destroyed, because if the estate hasn't been divided yet and part of it gets destroyed, then there's going to have to be a different division. But he can't be in a situation where he wants objects of idolatry to be preserved. That's the problem, right? Where was I? Yeah. But if they make this exchange after the property, right. So this is the problem, right? So the Gemara asks this. Let me read it again. The Gemara asks, this resolution works out well in the case of objects of idolatry, but with regard to wine used for libation, we have a problem. What is there to say? There's no situation in which the convert does not desire the preservation of the wine until the exchange. So the Gemara answers, the ruling of the Mishnah is stated with regard to Hadrianic earthenware, which is permeated with wine used for libation. Since the wine can be extracted by soaking the earthenware in water, the convert does not desire that the vessel remain intact. He doesn't care, although there still is a problem with fire. The Gemara asks, but doesn't he desire its preservation in the sense that it should not be stolen or lost? So he has an interest in this object of idolatry until he and his Gentile brother divide the estate. So rather, Rav Papa said that there's a different resolution. You say there is a difficulty from the case of the inheritance of a convert. The inheritance of a convert is different, as the sages were lenient with regard to it as a rabbinic decree, lest he return to his corrupted ways if it were prohibited for him to inherit property from his father. In the case of one who is not a convert and desires the preservation of an object of idolatry, it is prohibited for him to profit from it. So we can't use this example of the convert and his Gentile brother inheriting from their Gentile father, because that's a specific situation in which the sages were lenient, right? So to sort of encourage the convert to remain a Jew and not slip back into his old ways. That's very important, because once somebody converts to Judaism, they can't change their mind and say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go back to being a Gentile like I was before. He won't be a Gentile like he was before. Once you convert to Judaism, you're a Jew like any other Jew. If you then start to behave like a Gentile and engage in idolatry, then you're going to be violating all the laws that are incumbent on a Jew with respect to idolatry, and you'll be accountable for that. This is one of the reasons why when a non-Jew wants to convert to Judaism, the rabbis push him away 3 times. He has to really show how much he wants to become a Jew. That's for his protection, because he might not realize really what's involved in becoming a Jew until he is a Jew. then he doesn't want to do it anymore. Too bad. If you became a Jew, you're a Jew forever, and then you're going to be accountable for any laws you reject and break if you decide to go back to your old lifestyle. And now page 64b, and this is also taught in a Baraisa. In what cases that statement that a convert and Gentile are permitted to divide up common property that includes objects of idol worship said? This is said with regard to property that they inherited. But if they were partners, it is prohibited, right? So they were lenient in this case of inheritance for the reasons I just stated. But a Jew is a Jew is a Jew, and a Jew cannot profit from any objects of idolatry. And so if he has a business partner who is a Gentile, who engages in idolatry, and they come into some kind of property, he can't say, you take the objects of idolatry and I'll take the other objects, because again, what he is going to take in that partnership is offset by what the idolater will take. And this, dividing of assets where you take the idolatrous stuff, right, that's balanced by what the Jew takes. Therefore, he has an interest in those objects of idolatry being preserved until there's that division of assets. In a sense, he's benefiting from the objects of idolatry, and that's prohibited. And now he can't make that division. It's going to become prohibited to him. Okay, top of 64b, new subject. The Gemara mentions another discussion among Rav Nachman, Ula, Avdimi bar Papi, and Rav Chia bar Ami. They were sitting again, and a dilemma was raised before them with regard to a Gentile who resides in the land of Israel, in Eretz Yisrael, and he observes the 7 Noahide commandments. That's known as a Ger Toshav, right? This is somebody who's not only permitted to live in the land of Israel among the Jews, but even if he's poor, to be sustained by the Jews in the same way that we would sustain our fellow Jews and give them charity. Right? This is a righteous Gentile. A Noahide is a righteous Gentile. Why? Because he's following the Torah. Right? He is following the Torah. He accepts the 7 Noahide commandments that obligate him, which includes knowing about God, which requires Torah study. And he's rejecting all forms of idolatry, just as a Jew is required to reject all forms of idolatry and to distance himself from them. That's the Ger Toshav. Okay? And what is that again? It's a Gentile who lives among the Jews in the land of Israel and accepts upon himself formally that he's obligated in the Noahide commandments. And this, of course, includes a prohibition against engaging in idol worship. So what is the law with regard to the possibility that he can revoke the status of objects of idolatry? Again, we said before, an idolater can remove an idol from the realm of idolatry. What about a Ger Toshav? A Gentile who has, unequivocally rejected idolatry, formally rejected idolatry, and he's living in the land of Israel among Jews as a Ger Toshav. Does he still have the ability to remove an object of idolatry from the realm of idolatry and just render it, a pile of stone or metal, etc.? That's the question now being asked. Is it the case that one who worships idols can revoke the status of an idol, but one who does not worship idols cannot revoke the status of an idol? Or perhaps should it be reasoned that anyone who is of the same kind as idol worshippers, meaning a Gentile, can revoke the status of idols, and a Ger Toshav is of the same category as idolaters in the sense that he's a Gentile? So Rav Nachman said to them, it stands to reason that one who worships idols can revoke the status of an idol, but one who does not worship idols cannot revoke the status of an idol. Therefore, a Ger Toshav, who doesn't worship idols, cannot revoke the status of an idol. And the Gemara raised an objection to this ruling from a Baraisa. In the case of a Jew who found an object of idolatry in the marketplace, as long as it has not yet come into his possession, he can tell a Gentile, and the Gentile can revoke its idolatrous status. Once it has come into his possession, he cannot tell a Gentile and have the Gentile revoke its status. So this applies to any Gentile, because the sages said a Gentile can revoke the status of his own object of idolatry or that of another Gentile, whether he worships it or whether he does not worship it. So it sounds like a ger toshav could remove an idol from the realm of idolatry. But what is meant by the phrase worships it? And what is meant by the phrase does not worship it? If we say both this and that are referring to a Gentile, this is the same as the previous statement in the Brisa that a Gentile can revoke the status of his own object of idol worship or that of another Gentile, i.e. an object that he worships or one that another Gentile worships. But rather, isn't it to be understood that the phrase worships it is referring to a Gentile? And what is the meaning of the phrase does not worship it? This is referring to a ger toshav who does not worship any idols. And learn from it that a ger toshav can also revoke the status of objects of idolatry. But the Gemara rejects this reasoning. No! Actually, I will say to you that this phrase and that phrase are both referring to a Gentile, and with regard to that which you say that this is the same as the statement concerning his object of idol worship or that of another Gentile, no! We explain it differently. The first clause is referring to a case where both Gentiles worship the same idol. For example, this one and that one both worship Peor, or this one and that one both worship Mercury. And the Baraisa is teaching that one can revoke the status of an idol that belongs to the other. And the latter clause, which distinguishes between one who worships it and one who does not worship it, this is referring to a case where this Gentile worships Peor and that Gentile worships Mercury, indicating that an idolater can revoke the status of an idol that he does not worship at all, but only if he is himself an idolater, as opposed to a ger toshav. The Gemara raises an objection to this from a Baraisa. Who is a ger toshav? It is anyone who has accepted upon himself before three chaverim, i.e. people devoted to the meticulous observance of mitzvahs. Right? The ger toshav not only has to state formally that he rejects idolatry, but he has to do so in the presence basically of sages, right? Of very pious Jews who are learned in Torah law and are meticulous in their observance of Torah law. And he has accepted upon himself in the presence of such learned Torah Jews not to worship idols. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir, minority opinion. And the rabbis say, who is a ger toshav? Anyone who has accepted upon himself observance of the 7 commandments that the descendants of Noah accepted upon themselves is a ger toshav. He doesn't have to do this in this formal context in front of 3 chaverim. So the others say, that usually means Rabbi Meir, these have not entered the category of ger toshav. Rather, who is a ger toshav? This is a convert who eats nevela, which are not kosher, but who has accepted upon himself to observe all the commandments that are stated in the Torah, except for the prohibition against eating nevela. Right? In other words, he doesn't have to eat kosher food, but he accepts all the other commandments upon himself. That seems like a pretty high bar to be a ger toshav. The Baraisa continues, whatever the definition of ger toshav, the following laws apply to him. One may leave him alone with wine briefly without Jewish supervision, with no concern that he might use it for a libation, because what we are confident when it comes to a ger toshav is that he's not an idolater, thereby rendering it forbidden to Jews. That's why we can't leave it with a Gentile who is not known to be a ger toshav, because he might be an idolater. But one may not deposit wine with the ger toshav for an extended period of time, lest he exchange it with the wine of a Gentile, which is forbidden. And this applies even in a town that has a Jewish majority. But one may leave the ger toshav alone with wine briefly without Jewish supervision, even in a town with a majority of Gentiles. His oil is treated like his wine in terms of its permissibility. Now the Gemara interjects, his oil is like his wine? Can this enter your mind? Does the oil of a Gentile become, meaning assume the status of, wine used for a libation? Right? We're extremely stringent with the wine of Gentiles because they would use it for libations in their idolatrous practices. We don't say the same of oil. Oil was not commonly used as an offering in the world of idolatry. So rather, the Baraisa should be amended as follows. His wine is like his oil, meaning it is permitted to derive benefit from it, but not to consume it. And the Brisa continues, and with regard to all other matters, a ger toshav is treated like a Gentile. And Rabban Shimon says his wine is treated like wine used for libation. And some say that he says even drinking is permitted. Right? That's a huge discrepancy. Is the wine of a ger toshav treated like the wine of a Gentile that's utterly prohibited for drinking or for benefit? Or is it treated like the wine of a Jew, which is permitted even for drinking? The Gemara comments on the Baraisa. In any event, the Baraisa teaches, and with regard to all other matters, a ger toshav is treated like a Gentile. So with regard to what law is this stated? Is it not teaching that he, the ger toshav, can revoke the status of an object of idolatry in the same way that a Gentile, meaning an idolater, can? Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, no, it is stated with regard to giving away rights in a domain or renouncing rights in a domain in the context of the laws of joining houses in courtyards for Shabbos, right? So here we're talking about in a neighborhood or in a development, a housing development, where there's a courtyard of an apartment building, where they're not going to be able to carry objects on Shabbos, unless there's a joining of the courtyards, right? This can be a sort of very small eruv, where they have to have an agreement before Shabbos, where they deposit, the contents of one meal in one of the, in the domain of one of these houses, for the purpose of joining the courtyards, so that on Shabbos they can carry food or a bottle of wine from one house to the other. Well, what if there's two Jews and a Gentile who share that courtyard? The Gentile is not subject to the laws of Shabbos. He can't join in the Eruv, and he's actually going to prevent the Jews from joining together the houses unless they lease the rights of the Gentile in that courtyard for the purposes of joining the courtyards together for Shabbos. But if he's a ger toshav, maybe he can join with them or give permission so that they can join together. And this is as it is taught in a Baraisa, that an apostate Jew, that's a heretic, right? That's a Jew who has rejected the laws of Torah for himself, but who nevertheless observes his Shabbos in the marketplace, i.e. in public, right? So he's a Jew who's not very observant, but at least he's not going to go out on Shabbos and publicly desecrate Shabbos. He can renounce his rights in a shared domain to the other Jews in the domain so that they can carry in it on Shabbos. But an apostate Jew who does not observe his Shabbos even in the marketplace, right, meaning a Jew who's not a Torah Jew and publicly desecrates Shabbos, he cannot renounce his rights in a domain because the sages said that only a Jew can give away rights in his domain or renounce his rights in a domain, and this applies in the context of joining houses in courtyards on Shabbos, right? A Jew as opposed to an apostate Jew. So, under Torah law, under this halacha, and there are many halachas that are still in effect today, there's a real difference between a Shomer Shabbos Jew and a non-Shomer Shabbos Jew, right? We need unity among all the Jewish people, but there are just certain laws, like if you have non-mevushal wine, right, which can't be poured for a Jew by a Gentile, and also can't be poured for a pious Jew by a Jew who doesn't keep Shabbos, right? So there are many laws like this, many questions like this. Some apply, some don't. There's differences in the modern times versus ancient times. So when you have questions like this, you have to look up the law. You have to talk to an Orthodox rabbi. But I'm just telling you that for certain laws, there's definitely a distinction between a Shomer Shabbos Jew and a non-Shomer Shabbos Jew, right? A Jew who keeps Shabbos and one who doesn't. But with regard to a Gentile, this is not effective unless the Jew leases his domain in the courtyard. How so? A Jew may say to another Jew, my rights in this domain are hereby acquired by you, or my rights in this domain are hereby renounced to you, and the other Jew thereby acquires those rights, and it is not necessary for him to take possession of it through a formal act of acquisition. It can be done orally, right? So that they can join the courtyards together so they can carry there on Shabbos. And the Gemara relates, Rav Yehuda sent a gift, now we're at the top of 65a, to a Gentile named Avidarna on their festival day. Now, that was the first thing that we read in this tractate, right? That you can't do business and you certainly can't send a gift with idolaters on their festival day because they will come to thank their false deity, their idol, for the good that just happened to them on their festival day. So how could Rav Yehuda send a gift to a Gentile, this one named Avidarna, on their festival day? And Rav Yehuda said, I know of him that he does not worship idols. So he is not considered a Gentile with regard to the prohibition against giving a gift to a Gentile on the day of their festival. Rav Yosef said to him, but isn't it taught in a Baraisa, who is a Ger Toshav? It is anyone who has accepted upon himself before three Chaverim, between three sages basically, to not worship idols. This man, Avidarna, this Gentile, he has not accepted upon himself in front of three observant Jews that he will follow the Noahide commandments and therefore, formally reject idolatry and accept the other commandments, meaning that he accepts, that there's one God in the world, that he was created by that God, that he will not blaspheme, etc. So Rav Yehuda replied to Rav Yosef, when that Baraisa is taught, it is with regard to the mitzvah to sustain him, right? So the Ger Toshav is one who, even though he's not a Jew, if he's living in the land of Israel and he accepts the Noahide commandments upon himself, then if he gets poor and hungry, the Jews of the land of Israel have an obligation to sustain him, to give him charity. That's not an obligation they have to non-Jews who don't accept those laws upon themselves. Rav Yosef further objected, but doesn't Rabbi Bar Chana say that Rabbi Yochanan says a Ger Toshav for whom 12 months passed without him circumcising himself is considered as a heretic of the Gentiles? And certainly this Avidarna is not circumcised. Rabbi Yehuda replied, well, there, Rabbi Yochanan is referring to a case where the Gentile who desired to become a Ger Toshav took it upon himself to become circumcised, but he recanted and he did not circumcise himself, and in such a case it is assumed that he did not circumcise himself due to apostasy. But generally, in the case of a Ger Toshav who did not take this upon himself, this is not required of him. A Ger Toshav does not have to be circumcised. It's only if he, took an oath to do that, and then he rejected his own oath. But a Ger Toshav does not have to be circumcised. Gentiles do not have to be circumcised. Only Jews have to be circumcised. And I'm almost done. So questions or comments, please get them in now. And now we come to a fascinating little story. And I wish I could remember everything that I learned from Rabbi David Weinberg of the Oraita Yeshiva, who was with us this past Shabbos, and mentioned in a class that he gave this story that we're going to read right now. I'll try to remember some of the stuff that he said. Okay, the Gemara relates, Rava brought a gift to a minister, okay, a government minister, a very prominent Gentile. Where is this? In Bavel, right? So this is the Jewish community in Bavel, in Babylonia, which at the time that the sages of the Gemara are learning and teaching Torah, this is part of the Persian Empire, okay? So they're in Babylonia, which is part of the Persian Empire. So Rava brought a gift to a minister named Bar Sheshach on their festival day. Well, how could you do this? How could you bring a gift on the day of the idolatrous festival? Persians were idolaters for sure. So this is a minister of Persia. How could you bring him a gift on his festival day? Rava said, I know of him that he does not worship idols. Okay, so he's relying on this leniency that you can give a gift to your friend or to, a local government official if you know for a fact that he doesn't worship idols. Rava went to him and found him sitting up to his neck in rose water, and naked prostitutes were standing before him. And Bar Sheshach said to him, do you have anything as fine as this in the world to come? Right? So Bar Sheshach is saying to Rava, so this Judaism of yours, where you guys are bound by hundreds and hundreds of laws that make your lives, you're constantly limiting what you can and can't do because you have so many laws that obligate you, and so you say you're going to have a reward when you reach the next world, or when in messianic age in this world. He says, but I got it all right now. I got it all right now. What could be better than this? Right? So according to Bar Sheshach, this is the height of living. And what does that mean? He's in a hot tub. The water is like perfect temperature, perfectly scented, good for the skin. He's drinking the finest champagne. Who knows what other substances he's imbibing to feel good. He's got naked prostitutes dancing in front of him. Presumably they're not only dancing as a show, but they're available to him. So as far as he's concerned, he's got it made. This is the most that a person can hope for, the peak of luxury. So he's saying to Rava, so even if you get, you live your righteous life and you get your full reward, is it going to be any better than this? And I've got it right now. What does Rava say? Rava said to him, yeah, ours is better than this. You say you've got the heights of pleasure? You don't. What we have coming to us is better than this. And Bar Sheshach said to him, is there anything finer than this? What's finer than this? I'm utterly satiated with pleasure. Every nerve cell is firing with pleasure. I have pleasure to my eyes. I have pleasure to my nostrils. I have pleasure to my ears. Great music playing. I have pleasure, surrounding his body in this perfectly temperature hot tub, etc. Every sense is pleased. How could it be finer than this? And Rava says, yes, what we have coming to us is finer than this. And Rava says, and why is it finer? Because you have the fear of the government upon you. We will not have the fear of the government upon us in the world to come. And Bar Sheshach said to him, what are you talking about? As for me, in any event, what fear of the government is there upon me? I'm a powerful man. Right? So Rava is saying to Bar Sheshach, you've got it all right at this moment, but you don't have control over your life. You don't have authority over your life. You're subject to a king. When we enjoy the fruits, of a life well lived, of a righteous life, which will come to us in the world to come, whether you define that as the world of souls or when we return, revival of the dead in the Messianic age, then our reward will be from the King of Kings, from God, right? And it'll be a reward that he will give us freely and joyfully. And we won't be afraid that it'll be rescinded at any moment. You're enjoying this right now, but your king could summon you, and then what? You'd have to go. And while they were sitting, a certain royal officer came and said to Bar Sheshach, rise, as the king requires you to appear before him right now. Exactly as Rava was giving him the example. You have a lot of pleasure, but your time is not your own. You answer to someone else. As he was going out, right, this Bar Sheshach is now a little bit, angry. Not only does he have to give up this perfect moment of pleasure that he had, but he was embarrassed, right? He was a little bit humiliated because exactly that which Rava said is why your pleasure is transitory came to happen right in front of him. So as he was going out, he said to Rava, may any eye that wishes to see evil upon you burst, as it is clear that you were correct. Right? So now that sounds like a compliment. You know what? You were right. And so anybody who wishes you ill, they should be harmed. That's what he said. Rava said to him, Amen. And then Bar Sheshach's eye burst. Right? So in other words, he cursed anyone who wishes ill upon Rava and the Jewish people. Rava says, Amen. And then the curse that Bar Sheshach uttered to others, immediately was manifested himself. In other words, he's no friend of Rava, and he is quite cynically and hypocritically saying, yeah, well, people who wish you ill, they should be cursed. It's just words to him because he, as is proven, has those ill feelings toward Rava because he was embarrassed, and he doesn't really have it made, and he's coming to realize that, and then that gets proven outwardly as well. Rapapi said Rava should have said a response to him from a different verse. King's daughters are among your favorites. At your right hand stands the queen in gold of Ophir. Psalm 45, verse 10, which indicates that in the world to come, the daughters of kings will serve the Jewish people. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak said he should have said it in response to him from a different verse. The reward of the Jewish people will be such that no eye has seen it. God, aside from you, who will do for those who await him, which is Isaiah 64:3. Whatever the reward is of those who lead a Torah life, and that includes the Ger Toshav and the Noahides, right? The people who accept to live a Torah life, even if they're not Jewish, they're going to have an incredible reward waiting for them in the world to come. What it is, we just know it's great. We don't really know what it is. We can't imagine it. No living eye has seen it. But we do accept as an article of faith that it will be wonderful because God can be trusted to reward every mitzvah. And we see that the righteous and the pious don't always get rewarded in this world. Sometimes righteous people and pious people suffer very much. But God will make it good in the world to come. That's what I've got for us today. Let's take some comments. Cosmos says something or someone is holy if it is set apart for God's purpose. Just so. That's what the word holy means, right? Kiddush or Kodesh, the word that means holy, also means set apart. And what is it set apart for? Fulfilling God's will. Absolutely right. Sharon, if an idolater has an idol and worships it, can he actually sell it? If he worshipped it, wouldn't he be blaspheming his God? By selling it, is that considered revoking its status? Unclear, right? We had this discussion. It's unclear. If he's selling it, right, it might be that he just prefers to have the money, and so how important could it be to him? On the other hand, maybe he's going to sell it so that he can get a better one. Right? And he's going to use that money and combine it with other money that he's been saving up so he can get a better idol. Who's he selling it to? Another idolater who's going to worship it. I don't think you can say in that context that he has revoked its status. So, right, we need we need more evidence than just the fact that he sold it. And that's what I've got for us today. And with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Tuesday, at the regular Tuesday time, 6 p.m. Pacific. Have a great